Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm super excited to have you here today. My name's Scott with Service Pro Bono, and what we're going to be doing today is covering employee creation. So to do that, we're going to need to go over to the Human Resources section and go to Employees. Once we're there, we're going to notice a list of all of our current employees that are in the database. At this time, you may not have much in here. That's okay. So to get started, we need to head over to the bottom right-hand corner, hit the plus button, and we're going to see our new window for actually creating our new employee. So I'm just sort of going to run through this real quick with you and just give you a brief explanation of what all the important aspects and important functions do here. So let's go ahead and start from the top here. We'll do our employee details. That's just going to be all your personal or your employee's personal information, full name, first and last. And then active is going to be a little bit different than what you think. Active does not disable the username and login. I'll repeat that. Active does not disable the username and login. So if you get rid of an employee and you no longer want them having access to Service Pro Bono, then I recommend going in and actually changing their password. All active does is it disables them from appearing on the dispatch board. That way, if your dispatch board isn't really cluttered with a bunch of employees that don't need to be dispatched. So like all your office administration people, you would shut them off from being active and they would not be able to be scheduled via the dispatch board. Picture is just going to be a picture of your employee. Now moving on to login details and roles. Now the username is going to be generated automatically based on the full name. So let's backtrack here a little bit, and I'm going to go up to full name and type in a dummy name here. All right, so if you notice, I typed in here Ted Joe. It automatically put in our first name and last name for us. And then it also created a username and password. 9 times out of 10, the username is perfect. It always typically works great unless you have 2 employees with the same first and last name. Highly unlikely. But I typically like to go in and actually change the password. That's something a little bit easier to remember. Now you can leave it at the default because it's going to randomly generate a password for them. And then you can text the username and password that's generated to the new employee's cell phone, so they can save that info and log in with that. But I like to make things a little easier for my guys, so I'm just going to type in my own password. Something that's nice and easy to remember. And then if they ever forget their credentials, you can just remind them, or once again, you can text it out to them with their text link and credentials to mobile phone option. Now, if you don't want to send their credentials to a cell phone, you could just turn that off and it won't send. Roles is pretty straightforward. You just turn on what you want them to have access to. Now, there's a couple important ones that I would like to point out. For example, let's say Ted Joe's a technician, and we want Ted Joe to only see what's assigned to him for that day. In that case, all we're going to do is give him today's work orders, quotes, and appointments. That is just going to allow him to see what is assigned to him that day. If you want them to be able to see the past and several days into the future and not just today, then you don't want to do today's stuff. You're going to want to do the My section here. So it'd be My appointments, my calls, my customers, my quotes, and my work orders. That lets them see everything that's been assigned to that employee, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future. Obviously, you want to give them the time clock if you're using that feature to track hours. Now, other roles such as office administration, dispatchers, and all those highly valuable employees, they are going to be a little bit different. They are going to need a little bit more access. So instead of using the my's or the today options, you're going to want to give them access to their particular sections that they need to do their job. So for example, a dispatcher is going to need the dispatch board. They may want to record their calls. They are going to need access to customers to add new customers who are calling in. They may need access to the attachments. If they handle any of the accounting side of things, such as invoices, they'll need accounting, appointments. So you really need to go through and determine what their employee's role is in your company and what they're going to need access to make them more efficient at doing their job. Moving forward, address details. That's going to be your employee's personal address. So you could go through and enter that and get that info from your employee. Now, contact information is pretty important. I know a lot of people will only have, a cell phone or a mobile phone for their home phone. But if that is the case, don't put the cell phone number up here in the home phone and leave a mobile phone blank, because if you're using the texting credentials feature that we discussed up at the very top there, then it's using the mobile phone number that's put in here to actually text the information to your employee. So if you don't have anything in here and you are back up at the very top, you tell it to text link and credentials to mobile phone, it's going to come down here and see that there's no info under mobile phone, and it's not going to send anything. So at the very least, you'll need to put in mobile phone there if you're looking to text their credentials. Email details. If your employee is going to be making any type of communication with the customer via email, then this is the email that it's going to use. So for example, if your technician is going to be, at the end of the job, emailing the work order to your customer, then they're going to need the email that they're going to be sending that work order from inputted in here. So for example, a lot of companies will actually have a email specifically designed for this purpose alone. So we'll do like support@serviceprobono.com and then type in that password you use to access that email. And then anytime I send any bit of information out via email, when I'm logged in as this employee, it'll come from that email. And then your signature, just like every other email signature, is just a little bit of info at the end of that email. So we could put in something like, thanks for doing business. Metrics, pretty straightforward. Start date, termination date. Type is going to be if they're a contractor, employee. If there's something else that's not in here, just hit create new, and you can go ahead and type in your new type there and hit save, and then you'll see it listed in the options here. But for this, we're just doing a regular employee. Department, once again, if you hit show options and you don't see anything in here, just hit create new. That will allow you to create the departments that are custom to your business. Pay type, I'm going to go with hourly. Once again, all these fields you can go in and hit create new. if you don't see an option that's suited for what you're using it for. And classification, we'll do office and clerical. Skills are great because it allows you to actually distinguish between your employees who has what skills, which is useful later on down the road when you have a customer calls in and says that they are having an issue with a leak in their house. Then you're going to want to look for the employee who's best certified in plumbing. Or if you're an HVAC company and you have somebody that specializes in a particular type of AC unit, you can create that in here. Or leak checks, anything along that nature, you can really pinpoint down to those specifications. And then last but not least, we have work order roles. This is really going to determine what your employee can and cannot do on a work order. So the biggest one I've seen, a lot of the times, all this stuff is left yes. But if for one reason or another you don't want your employees to see the work order pricing, then you come in here and just click no, and then they would no longer be able to see work order pricing. And that goes for everything below that, add a work order, edit a work order, sign a work order, emailing, invoicing. If you don't want that employee to be able to do that particular function on a work order, just click no. And that's pretty much it. I recommend going back through, look over everything, quick look over, make sure it all looks good. And once you're finished and happy with all the info you got in there for that employee, just hit save. If you're missing anything, notice like I am here, it's going to pop up and say, hey, this is a required field. Please put something in there. So for this instance, it's mobile phone number. So let's go ahead and put something in. And let's try that one more time. We'll hit save. Perfect. It's going to take you right to their row. So we got Ted Joe in here. Everything looks hunky-dory. So we are good to go. Now, if there is something that you need to change, say you inputted some info and you're like, oh man, I got that phone number is 1 digit off, just simply click on the employee, come down here to edit, and then find the mistake that's made or the typo and correct it, and then hit save again, and then it'll update that information. That pretty much covers going through and creating an employee. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for checking out our video.